Welcome everyone to ResV Systems. Coach Reslow here in Cancun, Mexico, and I've had a wonderful week. Really, it was the vacation of a lifetime. But I decided to still stay in there with the ResV material, and I got lucky, and I've landed Coach DelSignore to come back on. I mean, we last time we saw you, Eddie, you were with the legend.
Yep.
The most winningest high school player in Rhode Island history. Of course, I'm blanking his name because I've probably had too many too many
Dave Ruffle, the man, the
David
myth, the legend.
Ruffle. Oh my God, yeah, yeah. It's been a long week, Eddie. A long, long week. But yeah, man, stoked to have you on. Really excited to talk some volleyball with you. So, how you been? What are things? What are things these days?
Same old, same old. And Rez, it's always good to catch up. I know we had a conversation offline before this to sort of get a little lubed up, as they would say, for the main event. And like I said, I think anytime you can get that hat in an interview, you know you're having a great week. So I'm excited to start. I know, so the last time I was on, at that point, me and volleyball were not having a very close relationship, but I can
Mm.
say since that I sort of had the bug a little bit to get more involved. So I was not playing very much when we did that interview. We did that. It sort of reignited some of the things that I had missed about the sport, and I can update and say I now play once a week, and that is 1,000% increase over my participation in the last like 2 years. So I'm back playing a little bit. I've entered a 2-day indoor tournament. Like I don't want to say I'm getting the bug
Wow.
full back to play. But if you had told me a year ago that I was going to play an indoor real sixes tournament, I would have probably not considered that very strongly. So I'm interested to see where this interview takes me after that.
So what you're saying is that ResV saves volleyball lives, brought you back from the brink,
That's right.
and now you're
That's right.
hammering the
That's
ball
right.
again on the left side. Oh, dude, makes me happy. I didn't know you're playing again. That's fantastic. I've always been sort of,
Yeah, I it's a that's a liberal playing would be a liberal definition of what I'm doing.
you're
I'm
still on
probably
the
hacking
floor,
around
dude.
a little bit, but
You're
yeah.
still on the floor. Like I've wanted to, secret between us and everybody watching. Like I've wanted to get back in the floor, but I can't jump anymore. Like I can't run
Mm,
middle, even if I wanted to. And I don't want to hit the ball. So like it's either libero
yep.
or setter. And I'm like, dude, somebody out there, if you need a 6-6 setter, I can set the ball well. Like I can run an offense. I mean, I've been doing it now in my head for a decade. So like my hands are pretty good and I block all right. It's still, the jumping's hard, but I can make it work on a block. I just can't make it work on a full approach and take a rip at a ball. Well, I could do it once, just once. And then
Yep.
once I land, it's over and I'm broken. I'm probably going to the hospital.
Yep.
But dude, I'm so happy you're back playing. It's really sweet. I mean, I've always liked watching you play. You had a cannon for an arm, real good ball control. You served the tar off the ball. I mean, you used to make volleyballs like splinter. I remember playing against you in a
I
co-ed grass tournament, and you just lit us up with that hammer of a serve you have. Oh,
I
so
used to be
good.
okay. I used to be okay. That
We
that
always
that
do.
player's gone. But yeah, I like I said, I missed somewhere deep in there. There was a missing of some of the aspects of playing, and it's just no, regardless of how much I've hated it for years, there's something about this game that nothing else provides. It's just once
Right.
you start playing, it sort of comes back, and I love it. I can't get enough of it. So
But
I'm
let's
I'm
but
excited to
brief
talk about it again.
But before we dive in completely, let's talk quickly about some of the other things that you're doing. Like you have a podcast for golf, which is really awesome. I saw you're playing flag football again. If you need a QB, that's my job. I can do it. And I know you're doing all sorts of things. So talk a little bit about that stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate getting a free plug in here. Yeah, me and Kevin McDonald, an old teammate of mine, my best buddy from high school, my doubles partner, sort of led a very similar parallel volleyball life to me. We do a podcast once a week called Surviving Golf. We put out a newsletter once a week. Touches on sports in general, thoughts of an athlete, just usually some weird story that I like to write about. I like to write. So Yeah, there's some good stuff on there, and I know we've talked, and we'll get a Reslow contribution soon. But yeah, that's my, I've always been an athlete, and I love sports, and golf is now my number one sport, and
Mm.
that's where my passion is, and that's what I'm going to put the most. So that's one of them. I appreciate the opportunity to get that out.
No, I don't golf, but I I do respect the podcast life. I've done a whole bunch of them, and no, actually, really excited to be a contributor for some of your stuff on the writing side because I like to write as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I thought it was fantastic when you started doing it. And I was like, dude, there's nobody better. Because actually, you were the first ever guest I had on a podcast that I used to do, the Empty Room podcast. And
That's right.
and I thought that was a very good one. I remember you were a little green. You weren't sure how this was all going to work, and after the first 20 minutes, you found your setting and you were in good shape. But now that you have your own podcast and listen to you do it, it's awesome. So really stoked for that. And hopefully, there's way more people that golf that watch this than me. So you're going to hopefully pick up a little bit of a bump. Not a lot. I mean, ResV's not taking over the world yet, but maybe we get you a couple more people listening to you, which would be
Hey,
sweet.
I'll take anything we can get. And yeah, I appreciate the plug. Thanks. Thanks.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. So we went over a little bit in the prior podcast about your background in the game, playing for Bishop Hendricken, winning state championships, and then you went on to play at BU while you were getting your law degree, undergrad, and then law. Yeah, and then
Undergrad, grad, and then law. I got
yeah.
so many papers from colleges that qualify me to do some stuff. But yeah, played club at BU, and then I'm sure I think I was saying off recording, like I've lived the life that a lot of volleyball players live. You play after that. I'd always been involved while I was playing in a lot of the junior stuff that was around in Rhode Island at that point. But then coming out of grad school before law school, got a tremendous opportunity to be the assistant coach at Providence College, which is a
Mm,
Division I women's team. And at the same time, went back and coached the men's club team that I had just finished playing for. So I was doing those simultaneously, and then eventually doing those both simultaneously while attending law school. I just, that was sort of the natural transition, I guess. So yeah, that was like I said, it's a pretty typical volleyball player's life. But yeah, I know you and I have talked about the coaching challenge, some of the coaching philosophies and whatnot. And I just find such a fulfillment in winning something as a coach, being able to lead a group, being able to mold a group. Um, Even when I was younger, just coaching camp, it would be so rewarding just to see the growth in players from like a Monday to Friday.
mm,
And I'm been out of the coaching ranks for a few years, but that I would say is one of the things I miss most about volleyball in general is just being able
mm.
to more than playing yourself, watch people take things that you have taught them, get better. And then I do feel like the progress players make in volleyball is like so tangible.
Mm.
So that's a pretty rewarding thing that I miss quite a bit.
Yeah, the coaching world, it's interesting because it follows the principle. Was it the Peter principle or Petter principle? I always get it wrong. Where to a very few, lots going to be given, right? Like no
Mm,
matter what you're working towards, there's only going to be a very few that achieve the most of it, and then the rest of the coaches or the rest of the people or whatever you're working in are going to be trying to get the rest of the pie. It's just the way it seems to work, no matter what happens. And in the coaching world, you have to take successes that aren't wins. Like it's very important you do that because you're not always going to win 20, 30 matches. You're not always going to win the conference championship. Oftentimes, a victory for certain teams is you go 500 or you get, your seventh win, just because you're in a conference that's just unbelievable. When I was at Johnson and Wales, Riviere won the majority of the championships. It followed that principle. Like Coach Kolek was excellent, but that team kept winning, and it really didn't break until Wentworth knocked them off. Oh, actually, it was LaSalle. Excuse me, yeah, LaSalle. LaSalle who knocked them off first, but Wentworth sort of went into that power vacuum, and that's where it is now. But yeah, I mean, what your successes are, it can't be defined by wins and losses. It has to be defined by the things that you do with the players, the relationships, how you get them better. And so like a team that doesn't win a lot, you have to really hang your hat in the fact that, but your players have improved under your watch. They've increased their level of play. Maybe they're a better team now. Maybe they do things a little bit differently that allows them, instead of losing sets 25-15, now it's 25-21. But
Yep.
you got to be really cautious of the idea that I'm not a good coach, or I'm not having a good effect if we don't win the conference championship, because everyone wants to win the conference championship. Everyone wants to be a top tier team, but your ability to teach and your ability to create relationships with these players that you've recruited or inherited, depending on whether you're high school, college, what have you, and then their improvement, that really speaks volumes of what you're doing as a coach versus the wins or losses. So
Yeah,
I
it's very
understand
hard
where you're
to,
coming. Yeah.
I would say, like, even looking like you got the macro successes in a season, improving your win total from season to season. But one of the biggest challenges I found coaching at PC, where we could track statistics, is the difference between a average player and an exceptional top class player is sometimes like micro of a statistic. I guess the best way I could always put that is we focused on blocking quite a bit, and one of the issues we always had as a team is, why aren't we getting more blocks as a team? And it was sometimes tough to show success when the bottom team in the country averages a block number and the top team in the country averages like a block and a half more per match.
Mm.
And if you think about how many points there are, even in a 3-set match, you're talking about 1/2 to 3/4 to one full additional block in 90 something, 100 and something points. So it's almost hard sometimes to see improvements on that level, because they are in such like the margins of the sport, going from averaging 4 kills a match to 4.3 kills a match. Like, what does that actually look like? And how do you actually, other than at the end of a season, looking back and seeing your statistics, you're averaging 4 kills as a freshman and then 4.3, very, very similar until you get a big enough sample size. We coach and played a sport where you fail most of the time, which sort of sucks. But also it makes it way harder to track the progress. But it's important, to your point, to not measure everything against people that shouldn't be measured to you. Like I personally should never measure my statistics versus Matt Anderson and what he would
Right.
look like in my situation. But trying to measure something is relative, but also making sure you're delving into the finest statistics you can to see that you're actually making progress. And sometimes it's tough to tell an 18, 19, 20-year-old to, keep perspective and understand that, we've been
That's
grinding
something.
on blocking for 2.5 years now, and I'm averaging 0.2 blocks more. Like, have I actually gotten better? And it's like, yes, you actually really, really have, because that's the only amount you can get better.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know if
it's
I
not
articulated that well.
no, but it's not sometimes, it's all the time.
Yeah.
16 to 21-year-olds, they all the time need that, hey man, you're doing the right things. Like, you need to help build them up, because they're going to look at it and go, oh
Yeah.
geez, 2.1 to 2.3, I haven't done
Right.
much. I'm like, well, no, but you don't
Right.
understand. Like that, if you I always took it this way, and this is a simplistic way, which is like, all right, if you took, we'll stick with blocking. Let's say we're averaging as a set, we're getting two blocks per set, right? So that means we're getting 2 points every set through our block for a point. Now that doesn't measure, is the block set in the right spot? Are we getting digs
Right.
more now because the blocks were
Right.
supposed
Right.
to
Right.
be? Are
Right.
we slowing
Right.
down some stuff so that we can actually get
Right.
counter offense? Like all those things that
Yep.
go into it. But all right, so we're getting 2 points every time we play somebody on our block. We get a block point. And then if you add that, if you say that stays stagnant and you add it through your 10, we'll just say 10 match, season, all right, we've gotten that particular amount of points, right? 20 or whatever, whatever it's going to
Yep.
be.
Right.
And I'm not a math guy. I'm a
No,
strategy
same. This
guy.
would be a struggle. Let's just talk conceptually with the numbers here.
But then you say, all right, we've improved ourselves. So now we're at 2.2 or 2.3. You add that up through 10 matches, you've almost, you've added another 10 to 15% points, right? Like
Percent. Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
actually added more points that you don't have to get swings on. And so if you think of it, again, as a math simpleton that I am, conceptually, that 2.2 versus 2.0 is only, if you look at it one match, all right, big deal. But if you stretch
Right.
that out
Right.
to all of
Exactly.
it, and it's a consistent level, you've actually increased your percentage of getting points to the block significantly. And then you start
Right.
saying, all right, well, we're doing that as a team, but what if everybody improved their blocking 0.2%? Now, instead of it's a 2.2, it becomes a 2.7, and that changes everything, because that's even a bigger
Right.
number. So it's yeah, you can get, I mean, that's the beautiful part about volleyball, Ed, and I know that you can make it as simple as you want, and you can make it as complex as you want. You can dive super down into the weeds and sort of figure it all out, or you can
Right.
you could say, dude, just serve it tough and pass the ball well, and we'll be okay.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. But you sort of said it, like it's just tough to, it's so tough to put into tangible, viewable, articulatable form any increase in skills, because like you said, you can become a better blocker and not average more blocks. But to your point, if you're a better blocker, your defense plays more. So now are you averaging more digs? But can you really connect that to your improvement as a blocker? It's almost like sometimes it's very hard to show proof that you've improved other than just feeling better and playing better as a team.
And then you go into the next level, which is, your blocks have increased, maybe because we're serving tougher now. So now
That's
they're
right.
out of system
That's
more,
right.
and now we're in the better spot. So the game, like I said, it can be as complex as you want. It can be as simple as you want. And I think that's why people love it. And then you have volleyball geeks and nerds like ourselves who sort of just dive in and like, oh, why is this happening? How can we make that 2.1 go to a 2.4 and change everything? So it's very interesting that way. And again, it does, in my opinion, go back to the idea that as a coach, your success doesn't necessarily mean wins and losses. Now, granted, Ed, you know this, at the Division I big
Gotta
time
win.
level, gotta win, or else you're going to find yourself without a job. But certainly at mid-tier D1, D2, certainly at mid-tier D3, well, all D3, I would suggest. Although the top 20 teams in Division III for women, especially, and certainly men, they're treated more like a D1, D2 type situation. And certainly all of high school, your value as a coach has a lot to do with player improvement, player relationships, and certainly creating an environment that people want to be a part of, right? You can always tell a tough situation, and sometimes it's not the coach's fault, sometimes there's other aspects, but you see a team that year in, year out only has like 8 people, like something's going wrong there, but you can also see a team where, maybe they always average
Right.
maybe they average 500, or they don't get too much above the Mendoza line, but at the end of the day they have a roster of 25, 20 people want to be a part of that program, like they're interested in what's happening, and that there's value there. So
yeah, it's tough. Everything's connected, and I think it's also tough. Like I've had teams where I thought this team was bad that would beat teams where I thought, wow, this team is good. But it's like not reflective of one team getting the most out of their like their ceiling, I guess, so to speak. I think used all of its potential out. Now, maybe that potential is not a conference championship team. And maybe sometimes there'll be teams that are so talented that the coach isn't doing anything, but they're still so good that they're still going to win a conference championship or get to a finals. And for me, that doesn't necessarily suggest a successful coaching experience. To your point, there's other dynamics in play. Like, have you really squeezed out all the talent in your team, inclusive of all the factors that go in, not only the on the court, but the off the court camaraderie and culture usually contributes to the on the court as well. So I guess when I boiled down to it, I always thought, is my season successful if this team has reached its potential, whatever that potential may be, as a way I thought I could measure it.
Agreed.
So like I said, if you beat just bad teams also playing badly, just play less badly than a bad team, like, is that really doing a good job? I don't know, but I also don't think so. But there are also people that say, if we win, who cares? That's the that's the point of sports. And
there's denial and everything.
Right. Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Yeah. I mean, my opening statement to any team that I coach, whether it be club or college, and I don't foresee myself going back to high school, but my opening pitch is, we can already beat the bad teams. So we're going to train to try to beat teams that no one expects us to win. And that's why we train the way we do. And when you give that opening statement to a group of young men and women, like, that sort of sets the tone. Okay, well, we're starting averagely bad. And coach wants us to be good.
Right.
And that's what we're going to do. So it's, again, coaching matters. It really does. And certainly I've always dreamed of being the coach that doesn't have to do much and you just have a team that rocks, but it's never been my life. I've never gotten that team. So, and probably even if I had that team, like, the closest team I had to that was this recent South County team, which was pretty stout for a South County club team. It was pretty stout.
Yeah.
And I had pieces to the puzzle that allowed me to do some cool stuff. But even then I couldn't sit there and watch it. Like, I had to keep us going forward. I had to keep even my best player, who I think is a D1 level guy. Like, I have to keep building for you. You need to continue to improve. You can't just be what you are. Or else I feel like I haven't done my job. So, it depends on how you embrace the college coaching, or not college coaching, but the coaching job in general. But my view on it, and I think it's one of the better views, is that I have to make the team better. I have to help every particular player in my roster get to whatever their next level is. And there's a distinct key there, Ed, and I know you know it, where everyone's next level isn't going to be the same level. So I can't expect the D1 kid to go to his next level and then expect this kid over here, who's probably a D3 guy. I can't have the expectations of what the D1 kid's level is, because they're completely different human beings and they're completely different skill levels. So it's about, assessing each player, having a relationship of trust with each player, and then helping them get to the next level. And if I can do that with 70 to 80% of my team, want to be 100, but people are unique and complex, and it's very challenging. But if I can get 70% of them, the team's going to be successful. Like, we're just going to be better. So that's the play every time. And again, that's how I measure my success. Have I been able to do that? So you, off camera, we were talking a little bit. I do want to pivot to some of the things we were talking about, which was, you were sort of thinking about things to talk about in this interview. And when you started naming them, I was like, oh my God, those are great ideas, super great ideas. So now it feels almost like you're interviewing me, but let's jump to those.
No, I love that. And yeah, to let everybody in on what that discussion was. Like, I just felt like me talking about my resume and my teams is pretty boring. But when I think about coaching, I do feel like there are things that I am sure that I've gotten right, and my philosophies are correct. And there are things that I'm sure I've gotten wrong. If now is an actual chance, like I would do with you or any of the people that I consider influences on me, I want to try to get to the right answer with you. So I don't know if I'll ever coach again, but maybe when my daughter plays, I'll be able to coach and get this right. But there are certain things that I just haven't gotten right my whole life. But let me start with the positive things that I think I've gotten right. and I don't know if there's a right answer in volleyball, period, because it's so player and system and team dependent. But I have a belief in strategy for every team that I don't think can be negotiated with. I know certain coaches have different philosophies, but and I'm usually respectful to those, but there are certain arguments that I will, I'll entertain politely, but I don't think that I'm going to ever change my belief on this. And my number one for that is every single team that I've coached for, I've had a philosophy that serving is the number one most important thing that we can focus on the volleyball court, away from culture, just on X's and O's. Serving tough, missing anywhere but the net is sort of my one corollary to that. But I'm just so ingrained that serving helps every other skill, and every skill is connected in volleyball, as you know. And I think as we sort of called out just by talking, it's the only closed chain skill. It's the only skill that's entirely dependent on the player doing it. It's not, setters have to deal with passing, hitters have to deal with setters, defense has to deal with blockers. It's just that player. It's only him or her, and that's their skill. And I've always just felt like being a good, whatever that definition is, of good serving team, I do think it's different for men's teams and women's teams, is the number one indicator to having a chance to win a match. And that's just sort of, I guess, my number one. This is correct. I refuse to be dissuaded from this. Teams that, and I think I hear it a lot in high school when I used to watch those matches. Like, I'd hear parents say, like, God, we're missing a lot of serves, or we missed too many serves, and that's why we lost. And I've just always, like, just my muscles have just tensed up when I hear something like that. Because I believe, and I think you probably agree with me, that I'd way rather miss a serve aggressively than pop every single serve in play and never miss that they're in system and they're going to score on you. So
right.
That's my number one.
I like it. I'm gonna throw a little bit of caveats on there, right? So I like it. I do believe, when I set up my system, the ResV system, which really is it's a culmination of my knowledge in the game, and I got information from different coaches, different systems. Certainly, Nancy Samaro was a real good person to bounce ideas off of, and she sort of helped me create sort of the format on how I was going to do things. And then I got to really study Coach Josephson, who was up in Canada for a while at Trinity Western, and then now he's at Kentucky, and he was Canadian coach for men's volleyball for a little bit. And but as I'm building my thought of my system, Nancy, what she does with her team is she has System 7, which is a list of itemized things that it's important for success in the volleyball world. And so I kind of made it System 8. And what I did was, and I changed the values around based on what I think was more important for boys and men's volleyball than what was important for women's volleyball. They're similar, but there's different hierarchies on what matters. But if you look at the way it works, the number one thing that's important for the success of a program or a volleyball team is kill generation. You have to be able to score. You got to be able to put points on the board through offense. And the second thing is passing, right? Ball control, passing. You have to be able to pass the ball to provide a situation so you can score, whatever that's going to be. But the third thing is serving. So it's in the top 3. You have to serve tough. You have to serve aggressive, and you're looking at a guy who actually, Coach Evan at Wentworth and some of the other brethren of the D3 men's volleyball world, they call me the king of short and weird serving. Because I never had guys in my gym that could just throw a jump topspin and rip, just bring pain the service line. I just never had that. So I had to figure out a way to make the opposition uncomfortable. And if I can make them uncomfortable, my blocking is going to be my key, and I'm going to be able to get the ball back. and whether I get blocked for points or whether I get sort of free balls or some sort of an off speed shot that allows me to dig and run counter, that's what I need to do. So with serving in my world, a lot of it's about holding the middle, like put the ball right by his ear so that the middle's not an option anymore, or serving short and taking an approach away from the outside hitter or the opposite. Maybe going deep in position one so that the ball has to be, taken from the setter over his shoulder. So it's not comfortable for him to really figure out what he wants to do there. And then certainly you have your standards, you don't serve. You certainly can pick somebody who's a weaker server and try to overpower them, but even then you're not going to put it right in their lap. It has to be in a seam somewhere. You have to make the move somehow, make it challenging. But yeah, system 8 for me, it's kill generations 1, ball control and passing's 2, serve tough is 3, blocking is 4, I think. And blocking and serving, they're almost the same thing actually. Like you serve very tough, you're going to block well.
Right.
They're just sort of connected. So those could be that could be 3 and 4 together, almost as one. And then from there, you start talking about things that have to happen, like any overpass or free ball, we have to terminate those. Bang, they're done.
Yep.
We have to our defense has to be opportunistic, right? Someone gives us a free ball, we're rolling that through, and then we're countering. But then the last couple pieces of the puzzle are, we hustle, unwielding hustle, and also emotional control, like those. And that's sort of the system 8 of how I do my thing. And then if you have a system like that, a list of 8 things that have to happen for you to be successful, you can take that list of 8 and look at any match and any set and go, where did we accomplish this? Did we accomplish this? Maybe we were lacking in this one. And then you can sort of figure out what you need to focus on in your training room to make sure that you have all the boxes ticked to allow you to win. But that's sort of how I do it. But yeah, I mean, the serving component, I should probably do a better job of cultivating that serving component, because I've had big players that can score. I've had very good blocking teams. I've had teams that can pass pretty well, but I've just never had that team that can just do what you did as a player, just go back on the service line and just bring heat. And because I don't, it's had to be more strategic. And so I teach more of the strategy of it. I really do need to cultivate a little bit better the serving power and precision. And to your point, we don't want to miss in the net. You miss in the net, all you've done is given a free point to the other team. We want to serve, I think my methodology is, if you're going to float, you got to float low. It can't be above the antenna. And if you're going to spin deep, if you're going to spin, it's got to be deep. You don't want to be short. You want that spin to be deep, right around the back line corners, and just cause pressure that way. But yeah, that's sort of how I see it.
Listening to you has made me trim my statement down a little bit. I guess what I'm vehemently opposed to, I think there are different ways to skin the serving cat, for sure, as long as there's importance put on it. What I won't negotiate on is never missing being a goal of a team or leading to success. Like, we didn't miss many serves this game, so we deserve to win. That to me is just false.
Agreed.
My personal philosophy for the women's teams that I coached was, because of a lack of overpowering jump serves, was always to eliminate the second third of the court from front to back, meaning every float serve, regardless of where it was placed or whatever form of serve player had, and that's where the serve had to land. And that's what I thought. And again, this is sort of an argument that I'm willing to hear both sides on, was sort of where I thought serves could be the most effective in getting a team out of system. For the guys, completely opposite story for me. I just wanted guys to go back and put their toughest serve in play. And that is, without diving into the super minutia of every practice, like being willing to accept practices where guys miss this to happen in practice correctly. Still, I never want a player to miss a serve in the net in practice regardless. But if a guy went back and hit 5 tough jump serves out of bounds long, that's not a punishable thing for me. because I want that philosophy drilled. And the only way I think you can get better is to suck for a little bit until
Yeah.
you
Oh yeah.
until
Oh yeah.
you practice enough, get the most reps and get it in, to eventually and hit, 2 or 3 serves out of bounds, in the philosophy that I wanted. I'm not going to get yanked because,
Right.
my coaches give me the blessing and give me the confidence to do that in whatever spot against whatever team.
Well,
So
the
I
only
guess that
thing
was hit
I
me.
was going to say, the only thing that I caveat there is that there are times where I will be adamant that we're not going to miss here, right? So like I have a color coding system for my serving. So I have a green, which
Oh
is
yeah.
100% serve. I have a yellow, which is 65% serve, and then I have a red, which is a 50% serve and has to be in. And like my serving
Yep.
cycle for the men's game is yellow, green, red. And if you're in any of my practice gyms, you'll hear me yell yellow, green, red over and over again. Like the three things that I yell the most are yellow, green, red for serving, 3 off, 3 in for out of system attacking, which is where the set should be 3 feet off the net, 3 feet inside the court. And
Yep.
then I'll also be yelling get loaded to start.
Yeah.
Get loaded, because everyone's body positioning is standing straight up, and it makes, you can't block that way, you can't dig that way, you can't pass that way, you got to start loaded. So those are the three things you'll hear me yell all the time. And so in a match, the cycle is yellow, green, red. First serve is yellow, 65%, whether it's a jump top, jump float, whatever it's going to be, 65% in a good spot. And certainly I'll give places that I want you to go. Also, they'll, at the college level, there's a scouting report, so you should know who we're
Right.
attacking, what we're trying to accomplish at each rotation. But then the other thing too is that sometimes you need a red serve. It's got to be
That's
in,
true. You're not wrong.
like it's got to be in. Like it's 25-24 in set 4 against the national team, or a team that you can upset. And, this kid has gone back and he's 1 for 12 of the jump top spin. It's like, dude, we need a red here,
Yeah.
and it's got to be in a smart spot.
Yep.
And if you train it right, your kids will know, all right, red serve, it's going to be sort of a pop in float, but it's going to be in a spot that takes something away, that allows our blockers to understand that variable is gone now. So there's only 2 other variables to worry about, which allows us to get a better opportunity to at least a slowdown. Because that's one of the things in the blocking world that I think people don't recognize, is that, hey, we sure love block points, but a lot of times that's not going to happen. If
Yeah.
we can just touch it and slow it down, that's going to allow us to get a
Yes.
dig, and then we'll counterattack. So it's again, the serving and the blocking are really almost a combo in my world, and they link to each other. Now, if you miss on a red, you're going to hear from me. Like, it's not going to
Yes.
be a comfortable conversation,
Yep.
because I'm viewing that as a must. It has to happen in that particular situation, and that's why we train it that way. But to your point, exactly, yeah. The only way you become a good jump topspin server as a male is, well, quite frankly, as a female, as anybody, like, it's all failure to success. You're
Yes.
just rep, and figuring it out. The hardest part, actually, in my opinion, with those types of things, especially with younger players, is getting them to stop when they start to feel discomfort. Like, dude, give your arm a rest, let you,
Yeah.
recover a second, and then start, you just don't want to hurt yourself doing rep after rep as you're trying to figure it out. But yeah, it's all about failure to success. You'll miss 17 serves, and then finally the one that rips, that's just perfect, and you're like, and as a coach, it's where you're like, stop, remember how that felt. How did
Yes.
that
Yes.
feel? How did it,
Yes.
everything was in line and everything felt great. And on contact, it just popped off and it dove like right across the net into a perfect spot. How did you feel? How'd your
Yep.
body feel? Now let's try
Yep.
to find that feeling. Let's recreate it over and over again.
Yep.
And
And now instead of it being once every 20 times, let's make it every 3 times out of 20 times. And then maybe next
yes,
week we're going for 5
yes.
times out of 20, you
Yes,
know?
yes. The whole goal is just to make sure that you don't overexert yourself, because you take this type of rip over and over again, like your shoulder's gonna hurt. Like you just gotta
Hey,
you gotta do it. recognize your body when it hurts and when it doesn't, and how
Everybody
to.
but me, Res. Yep.
Well, I mean,
Yep.
you were this, you were the, if Jeff Vanderveer, do you remember Jeff?
I
I
sure do.
mean, one speed
Sure
Jeff
do.
Vanderveer.
That's right.
You were the evolution of Jeff. Like Jeff had his
It's,
game, and then the next evolution was Eddie DelSignore, the king of the jump topspin, and
yeah. But I sort of think back, I would not be a good server if people had told me to stop missing as a JV player. And
right,
you wrote a
right.
great feature on Kevin Harrington. I was blessed. That's my first coach ever, and he's one of the greats. And
He
I know
is.
the story of me is that I hit more balls from the front row to the back wall because I was bad, but I hit them fast and hard. And Kevin never told me to stop doing that. And maybe take some off and keep them in the court. That was not a step to long-term success. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter as a freshman that you're hitting 100, at least in my point of view. Like I look at guys that do that and I think of myself, and I will never hold something, like I said, even if you see a great result once every 50 times, if that result is in there, I'm working to make that result more and more prevalent, not limiting that potential. And I was, as a result, empowered to keep swinging and hitting the ball very hard. And then as you do that, you get better at it. But I was given the leash to get better at it. And I guess that sort of like intros me to my second thing that I think I know is, like, we sort of said this phrase earlier, but we live in a sport of failure. And I hate when I see coaches and players that don't trust like the long-term process and the long-term sample size, and understanding that defensively and offensively, especially defensively, you're going to fail like the vast majority of the time. It doesn't mean something in that process needs to be changed unless there's a large enough sample size to prove that it does. That goes for serving aggressively. That goes for playing a certain defensive system. I can vividly remember coaching the BU club team and playing a certain outside in our region. And we had a certain blocking scheme against him that I thought took away what he did best. But with every good player, that's not going to stop a good player entirely. It's going to bring maybe a hitter who scores 75% of the time down to what I hope is 65% of the time. That's still greater than half, and that's still going to be tough to make it show results. But it's important to not overreact to small sample sizes. Like, just because you play a certain defense and an All-American comes in and gets 20 kills against it, like that's what's supposed to happen. It's important that you're just trying to play the highest percentage possible. But
Right.
there's a chance that if something has a 75% chance of happening, it may happen 10 to 30 high percentage. And that doesn't mean you're doing a bad job. Doesn't mean something has to be changed. And I know specifically, like, I just remember coaching a club team, watching those guys go back to their high school, watching something that I had taught blocking wise not work. And then, after an outside makes a great play, like the coach sort of be mad that, like, oh, next time we get a block angle now, or a great outside goes and kills the ball angle. God, we got to take more angle. And it's like, well, maybe that person is just allowed to be good enough to do that.
Well, I have plenty to say on that. I think it's a great point. So the number one thing that I really want to talk about in this particular subject matter is, as a coach, your job is to teach your kids recognition, and that's all types of recognition. Because really, I mean, volleyball in my world is mental chess. Like, no one's doing anything different than anyone's done it before. Like, everyone's seen all the patterns, everyone has tried all the different ideas, so no one's recreating the wheel. But what you are seeing is that players with a certain level of talent are being put into situations for them to be successful. So how do we recognize the pattern? How do we recognize what's good and what's bad? I always get a little chuckle as I go to matches and I see people play, or whatever it might be. And like, somebody will hit a ball cross court hard and the libero's in the right spot, and they make the touch, but the touch glances off completely and it goes backwards. They all chase, and then the first thing the team does is go, oh, great touch. And I'm like, is it though? Like, that's not a great touch at all. Like, that's a bad touch. Like, the ball was hit right at that person and they couldn't handle it. It's not a good touch. So the recognition of the actual things that are happening is a big deal. And I can't tell you, Eddie, how many times I've had players look at me after a play going, what? And I'm like, dude, the kid just made a good play. He's allowed to. Like, that's the thing. Like, good players make good plays. We're trying to make them uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop them every time. That doesn't mean we're going to stop them half the time. Our goal might be just to stop them twice, and in those 2 times that it happens, it's a big deal.
Yes.
But that's it. So the recognition of what's happening is gigantic. Just like as an attacker, as a setter, right? Ball's passed way past the 10-foot line. Your setter starts sprinting out there, is going to try to run tempo. No, that's the wrong recognition. We're out of system now. So now our back row players just step in, set a 3-off-3 in high ball, and then we're going to look to score off the triple block that's coming. Like, that's, or maybe we get the ball back, or whatever it's going to be, but recognizing the patterns. And in the coaching world, it gets even weirder. Just like you said, a lot of coaches like to give really tough and hard feedback, like, way too often, right? Okay, so
100%.
The block is set to take away line. Okay, so we take away line, but the kid rolls it over top, and it goes to position 1, and we don't get it and score. And a coach would be barking, "Oh, the block has to be better." Well, that's not really the block's job. The guy hit over the block and rolled it down the line. It should be the middle back's ball to go pick it up, or if the block wasn't, if the kid's just good and he's touching 11-5 and he bounced it over the block, like, what are you going to do? You got to serve tougher so that kid doesn't have a good set like that. So, but yeah, I've seen coaches give a lot of harsh, tough feedback. And like, you can make a kid wilt that way. College kid, high school kid, you can just be, and if he or she doesn't understand why the harsh feedback is coming, it can fold a kid real hard. There's certain things that, quite frankly, for me, are non-negotiable as a coach as I'm coaching on the floor. Like, for me, I like to set up back to the blocking line. That's sort of where I like to be initially. So, like, hey, we're taking line away first. We're taking line away first. And if my right side or setter doesn't get where they're supposed to be, like, they'll get some pretty stern feedback from me. Hey, take away line. That's what we're trying to do here. But I will never, I never try to overwhelm them with harsh feedback, because now's not the time. If you want to provide real tough feedback in the training gym, that's a little bit different. Granted, you never want to embarrass a person. You never want to make a person feel like, they're horrible. But at the same time, in the practice gym, there are certain expectations for whatever you're trying to do, and you want to give that feedback, certainly. But in the last thing you need in a match where it matters is for a kid to feel like, Jesus, kid won't, the coach won't get off my back. Like, and it's so how much feedback do you need? I try to stay all positive, with the exception of, and I'll even tell the kids, here are my 4 things that I will get upset about if we're in match play and it's not done. And if those 4 things aren't touched, I'll always be positive. But those 4 things, you're going to see the Coach Reslow's mean face, and if it's egregious enough or it's left alone enough, you're going to sit next to me and someone else is going to get an opportunity. So, that's how I do it. But yeah, the recognition of everything, of patterns, of what the scouting report is, of what's a good play, what's a bad play. I think that's massively important. And it's to your point of what you were talking about.
Yeah, I just think some coaches, I think, give players an expectation that there's a way to win every single point. And I always try to say, like, if there was a defense or a certain blocking form or a certain setup that could stop somebody, for sure, it would have been figured out by now. This is a hard sport. And I feel like, using the blocking line example, which is something that I like to do as well. There's times where you're going to set up a block line. It's going to be perfectly sealed off. An outside is going to go line anyway, and it's going to go off your hands and go out of bounds or block weird. And for me, like, that's not the time to be like, block line. Like, yeah, no, I know you were doing it. Am I looking at you doing it correctly? Like, yeah, you just got a
Block
funky
line,
box. Right.
block line harder.
Right. That's your block right there is going to have, let's just say, a 50% efficiency on getting the ball to go where you want it to go. That means half the time it's not going to work too. There's so little in volleyball that I can say, if you do this way, it's going to happen 100% of the time.
It just
But
doesn't.
to your
Yeah.
point, it's important to know, like, hey, this is a correct line block that just didn't work because that's volleyball and that's how it works.
Kid ready to play.
And this is an incorrect block that you've continued to do, and it's not working because you're doing it wrong. And that's sort of the thing that I'm talking about. Like, there has to be a recognition by coaches and players to keep things in perspective, to keep that sort of keeps the pressure like off me. Like, there are times where I sort of think to where I'm a player. I used to hear coaches say all the time, like, just block more angle, just block more angle, just block more angle. I used to think to myself, like, how insulting is that to me? That you think you can just stop? Like, what? You don't think I'm capable of doing something else? Like, that's
it goes to one of the things I've talked about in a bunch of interviews where my coach, as my coaching career kept going, like, one of the main pivot points to make me a pretty good coach was I was coaching Johnson Wales and called a timeout because we couldn't pass. We were getting served off the floor, probably by Springfield, because Springfield they were just mind-blowingly tough jump top spin servers. Called a timeout, said, hey fellas, we're not passing well, we got to figure it out. And one of my freshmen looked at me and said, great coach, how do we do it? Like, you have to provide some sort of answer on how.
right.
You can't just say, hey, block more angle.
Yeah.
Like,
stop facing the best server in the country will help that as well. Like, it's just,
like, how do we do it? And that made me it changed my world, Ed, because I had to start thinking, well, I need to systemize everything so that I can provide answers to that situation. So like, at that time I didn't have it, but now if that time was recreated, I would be like, all right, we have to have wider base on on contact. We have a pre-hop, and instead of passing the ball to target or thinking that's what we want to do, let's pretend it's a dig and try to pop it straight up into the center of the court, which will allow us to get a swing. And it took 15 seconds for me to explain that, and it provided all the points that gives them some solutions to the problem, and then we go. And that's the difference between a coach that can provide some solutions versus a coach is like, yeah, no, I mean, no kidding, dipshit, we can't pass, we get that,
right?
What are we gonna do about it?
And I also feel like you could, as a coach, give that perfect advice right there and come out of that timeout, and somebody could have the perfect base, seams covered, great jump stop, perfect platform, and you're just playing somebody who's better than you. And I've always considered it just so important to be like, hey, the process versus the result. Like, hey, you did everything right. It's still volleyball, and there's still going to be points scored. So we don't change up what we do if it's correct based on 1, 2, until it becomes a large enough sample where it's like, okay, we might have to change something here. But it's so easy as a player to just player and coach just overreact to everything.
Well, let me tell you a story. Can't. We were at Vassar, Johnson Wales at Vassar men's volleyball, and we were now in our prime at JU. We were a national team. We could compete with anybody. And Vassar was top 5, top 10, as they usually are in the country. So, it'd be nice to get an upset at Vassar. And we ended up losing in 4, and it had nothing really to do with anything other than they hit the ball in such a way that a lot of times our digs, we couldn't soften them enough to keep them in play. Like, a lot of lucky fans got balls that night because we just kept getting smoked and the ball going to the stands. And that was why we lost. But I'll never forget, we're playing them, and I had scouted them pretty good, and I liked what I saw, and I was like, oh, you know what? Normally on the right side, we're trying to force them down the line, but we're not going to do that this time. No, actually, I think I said, I think we can handle them down the line. So let's give them more line than usual. That's what it was. I said, if they go down the line, we're going to be able to do it. But if they hit cross court, we're going to be doomed. So let's not do that. And so the very first play of the very first game was set with them. My outside hitter blocker takes angle away, and the lefty right side basically goes over him and snaps it, to 2 at the 10-foot line. And he looks at me and goes, what I do wrong? I'm like, nothing. That kid just made an
Yeah,
incredible
right.
play.
Exactly.
We're changing nothing. Like, that
Right.
doesn't change
Let him try
anything.
that 20 more times and see if it happens.
But yeah, I think we won set 2, and then we lost in 4, but it was a great match, one of our better matches. But I'll never forget it. Like, everything was designed the way it was supposed to. Like, hey, it should have worked, except that kid just happened to be 6'5" lefty that could jump over
Right.
top of our block, and it's
Right. So what do you want?
we're gonna serve that kid short and see if he can do that type of approach off just 2 feet, as opposed to big wind up and do it. And that's but that's, the recognition part, gigantic. All right, couple more points. What else you got?
Yeah. Hit me. That's it for my positives. I have some negatives that I know I introed one, but before we got there, I sort of thought of a prompt, and I'll hit you, just on the fly here. When I was thinking of like my proudest moments as a coach, I'll give you what I was doing may be working. It's my favorite team that I've ever coached. It's a BU team. I want to say the year's 2014, but we ended up winning the national championship for our division. Great team,
Nice.
worked hard. The most talented team I've had that also worked. Like my favorite coaching year, nothing I think can top it. Not because of the result, but just because of the guys. We played the University of Virginia in the final, and they boasted probably the best outside in the tournament. And we employed the same strategy, time cross court, just because he's good. And it finally, like the one point that we needed finally happened. And that's when it sort of clicked to me. Like, you play the percentages. Set 3, I think it was 13-12 or something like that. So a point for us to get a transition gives us 14-12, gives us a pretty good chance of siding out the next 2 national championship. And I'm like, okay, like the margin that we needed, where this kid, I don't want to see his stronger shot, but his secondary shot is still just as strong. But maybe throughout a match, he gets dug one more time going cross court than he would line. And who knows? That's how I'm going to play it to myself. It finally happened. But that's like the toughest type of stuff that I'm talking about, where you trust your system, you trust your process. It finally works. And like the margin that you're hoping to improve in, like that 1/10 of a block, that 1/10 of a dig that finally makes all the difference, finally comes into play. And for me, that was my coaching climax, like winning, like that, not the next point that followed where we side out. That point right there was finally like, you know what? My guys trusted me despite poor results for 2 matches, like trusted the long game, trusted the process, continued to believe in it, continued to do it. And it finally shows up when it's most important. And I was thinking, like, so based on your philosophy and what you feel is important, is it a win? Is it a moment? Is it a particular player?
Well, I like
a case study. What's your most successful?
Well, my most successful moment.
That's a lot. I know it hits you right off.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. For me, it was always important when well, let me take a couple steps back. So you know Ed, but I don't know if the ResV people know that, I was a college basketball player, and I was pretty good, and I had an opportunity to play professionally over in Europe, and it didn't work out, mainly because I'm an idiot. But at the end of the day, I had opportunities, and they sort of got squandered. And then I got into the volleyball world, fell in love with it, but I always felt like I was pretending. Like I was a basketball guy pretending to be a volleyball guy. Like, I hung around with guys that were real volleyball guys, and they were always very nice to me, but I always felt like they were like, oh, Res is just a basketball guy, like it'll be fine. So when I got the college coaching job, I was just so desperate to fit in, and I wanted to be good. I wanted to be solid. I wanted to do it the right way. I wanted to prove to my college basketball coach that I knew better. And, newsflash, I didn't know better. He wasn't the problem. I was the problem. So, I was I was a shithead, and it took me a while to figure that out. So with all that being the beginning part of this, my favorite moment, couple of moments, and they always keep happening, which I'm really grateful for. Like I don't have one peak moment, but there's been some good ones. Like when Jay-Woo in 2020, what was it, 2014? Yeah, 2014. We had a real good team. It was the first real good team I had. And so we started beating teams that we weren't supposed to beat. Like, Emmanuel had been a real tough team in the GNAC, and we knocked them off. We beat Wentworth. We beat some teams that were really good. Never got that Riv team, but I remember it was sort of funny because I went on a stretch where we beat Emmanuel, we beat I don't know, some outfit out of New York. We beat another team out of Pennsylvania. We had a real strong month. And when the season was over, like all of a sudden that week that happened to have where it was like Pennsylvania, New York, Emmanuel College, and somebody else, like all those coaches resigned. And I and I was
I
like,
did it.
I was like, that's right. Reslow beats everybody, and you gotta get out of Dodge, right? I became the coach killer for a little bit. My friends were like,
That's
dude, you're the
great.
coach killer. I was like, that's right. I finally have arrived. And if you lose to Jay Woo, you have to turn in your keys. It's over. That was really cool. That was a great moment. Probably the best match I was ever a part of at the college level. We lost to Wentworth in a semifinal at Wentworth in 5, and it was probably my greatest coaching as a collegiate. Because I had gotten some bona fides. That was 2019. I had gotten some bona fides. Like I'd been coach of the year for a little bit, and I'd been named to the American Volleyball Coaching Association's All-American Committee and National Team Ranking Committee. So I had gotten some bona fides under me, and I was respected in the country a little bit. But I hadn't, I always was bridesmaid, never the bride. I never got the GNAC conference championship. And of course, I'm playing Wentworth, and Wentworth is a very, very good team. Coach Evangeliо, one of the best coaches in the country, in my opinion. So he and I at his home court. And the only reason we were we were at Wentworth was because we lost to LaSalle on the road because Jack Pinsence, my buddy, who hangs out with me all the time now, didn't do his homework, and he had to sit out a match, and we ended up losing that
Oh
match.
God.
It was terrible. It was the worst. So anyway, we're on the road, and this is in 2019 was the first year also that I really truly implemented my system, which would turn out to be the ResV system. Like I had done a lot of research. I had really worked hard to improve what we were going to do. And I was like, this is what we're going to do. And it worked. Like we were knocking off teams. I think we were we were the 3 seed, but we were the 2 seed for most of the year. And then we sort of fell off the pace and we're the 3. And then it was 3 at 2. And so we're playing Wentworth, and Wentworth, we match up pretty well. They probably have a couple better players than us, but we're a little bit more well-rounded. And, we had Cameron Ponce, who ended up, CP's a real good player playing for Boston
I'm going to be
Ponce.
playing with him in a couple of weeks.
He's a wonderful dude.
Yeah.
I love him. I mean, I loved him back then. He didn't love me back then. He didn't like me that much, but we've gotten a pretty good relationship now, and I've always loved him. I always thought he was a great kid. He was our horse, and like as the match was unfolding and I was doing what I wanted to do, making moves and whatnot, we lost the first 2 sets, like 25-21, 25-22. And I remember thinking, shit, like, it can't end here. Like I can't get swept in 3 here. I gotta figure this out. And I looked over at our libero, who was a kid named Nicky Potato, real good player out of New York. And Nicky had just come back from a concussion, and he just looked a little off. It wasn't right. And I was like, I got to make this move. And I changed liberos. I changed some other things up. and we won the next two, and then in set 5, we lost 15-13. We had a couple swings to actually win, and we missed both, and
Oh,
yeah, and it was great, and it was a tough loss, but at the end of the day, like, I remember sitting there going, um because Evan's such a great guy. Like, he comes over afterwards and goes, Jesus, that's one of the best matches I've been a part of. And like, you don't realize it. Like, I'm so in the mix of thinking about how it should go. And like, when it's over, there's a moment where you're just sort of like, shit, it's over.
yeah.
And for Evan, he's such a good dude, comes up, by the way, Evan was also the same guy who gave me a hug when my career ended. Like,
I love that dude, by the way.
yeah,
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 Evan's a guy I know too. Love that guy.
yeah, yeah. So, when my career ended, it ended on a terrible, terrible note. I mean, no one knew at the time it was going to end there, but, I screwed up the lineup against LaSalle, and I ended up losing in set 5, 15-13. And the only reason we lost 2 points was because we were out of rotation because I screwed up the lineup. So, like, as bad as it could be, and then we played Wentworth, and like, we just weren't ready. But Evan was the first guy to give me a hug. Said, "Dude, it's I saw it happen, and I felt for you, because we've all been there. Just mine happened to
Yeah.
be at that particular time." And if you think about it, like, I've filled out thousands of lineups in my career,
Yeah. Right. Of
thousands,
course. Of
and
course. Can't mess it up in
I
day one of pool play, of course.
yeah, thousands of lineups. And it was probably the only time I screwed up a lineup that bad was probably my first year at JWU. So it's been like a 12-year period before I fuck up a
Yeah.
line. Excuse me, screw up a lineup
No,
that
it's okay.
poorly.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, how could it happen? But it happened, it's part of the story, part of the lore. But yeah, that 2019 match was awesome. And I remember, and actually this is perfect that we brought up CP, because I remember what I said. Cameron was, he didn't like me that much back then. Like, he felt like he needed more from me that I was capable of giving, and there was some tension and all that fun stuff. But it mattered to me that kid, because he was the most skilled guy we had ever had. Like, he came from Beta Bay, he had played top level volleyball. He's quote unquote slumming it up at JWU and Coach Reslow, and it mattered to me that kid felt good about his final match as a senior playing. And so, like, when the match is over, I'm bringing in my huddle, and I've never been able to give the speech about winning a championship. It's always been the same speech, which is, this one hurts, but we're going to use it. It's going to be character driven building for us, and it's going to be how we build our, hold on to this feeling and use it as motivation
Yep.
for next year, the standard
Yep.
stuff. And I believe it. It's not just a standard story, but it's,
Yeah.
I like to say,
It's only so many things you can say in that moment. That's one
yeah.
of them. Yeah.
But I looked right at Cameron, and I looked at him, and he's tearing up, because all seniors tear up when their last match is over.
Yeah.
And I said, Cap, how we feeling? Like, you okay? And he's like, I like the way this match went. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, it's good for me, man. It's
Yeah.
good for me. And I loved him for it, because he could have buried me right there. I've never
Yeah.
singled out a person in a final match before, but I felt it was
Yeah.
important, because he was such a big part of who we were and what we were doing, and the relationship that we had throughout his 4 years was rocky. And I wanted him to say, here's your moment. You want to pin me to the wall, you can do it. But
Yeah.
if he was
Yeah.
satisfied with it, I was
Yeah.
happy. And then,
Yeah.
the last highlight recently was, South County. I took a team to a regional and won it with the boys, 18-1s. And I think
Yep.
nobody saw that coming. And I think there's a video of the match happening, where we win, and we go in the handshake line, and I turn to Big Jack and go, we just did this. Like, how did
Yeah.
this happen? We're not supposed to
Yeah.
be this good. And that's that feeling that you get when you beat somebody you're not supposed to,
Yep.
because that was a team out of New York. Now, we saw them a couple more times after them. And again, I felt talent to talent, that they were better. But after we
Yeah.
beat them at Mohegan, we beat them every time. Like, they just could not figure us out, which was pretty cool. And their coach at the time was kind of a jerk. Like, I'm trying to be like, hey man,
That makes it sweeter though.
how are you? And he kind of was like, who are you? And I'm like, you don't know who I am? That's fine,
Yeah.
but you're
Yeah.
gonna know who I am soon.
Yeah.
And So yeah, those are moments. But and again, I'm interviewing you, but it's just
No,
talking
I
about
like
me
it's
the
not an
entire
interview. I
time.
mean,
But
I just like, it's good to just chop it up.
yeah, man, yeah, man.
Yeah.
But those are some of the peaks for me, and I'm very proud of ResV. I'm very proud of the information that I've acquired through my career, and I think I do it pretty well. And certainly, my story. I'm waiting for another opportunity to open up at the college level, and hopefully that happens again. But if not, I'm grateful for the opportunities that South County's given me and the trust they believe what I do. And ResV's sort of cool. Like people sort of dig that. And even though it feels sometimes like it's just my ego project to keep me going forward, but there are a lot of coaches out there that I think need help, and I'm here to do it. And now not many take that opportunity, but like I want, I heard Corey Mack once say that Res could be the savior of volleyball, and I wouldn't go that far, but like I definitely am here to help. Like uh I want to create a system for education for coaches so that they can have, so Rhode Island volleyball can be really cool. I think and maybe that's the thing. Like I wasn't around when Brian Garapi and all those dudes were playing big time volleyball and doing cool stuff. But I keep hearing stories of it, and it's not really around these days. So let's
Yeah.
make it back to where it needs to be. So
Yeah. I love that.
so let's
Dude, thanks
let's
for that.
talk.
That was in depth.
Oh, thanks, man. Let's talk. I want to talk about that one thing about the things you don't know. I want to hit those, and then I
Yep.
gotta let you go because
Yep.
it's almost margarita time here again in Mexico. So
Nice. If it's, I don't know if this is as exciting, but my dog is getting groomed this afternoon. I don't know if that's as
nice,
exciting as early happy
nice.
hour, but good.
Nice.
That's very exciting for her.
Well,
But
see, the
yeah,
thing
this,
is, I bought this hat the first day in Cancun, and it had, and this is why I love this hat because it wasn't because I wanted to look cool, but now that I look at myself, I look pretty good. But
yes,
but it
yes,
was because I have bad eyes. Almost everybody knows I have terrible eyes. Wear these thick glasses, and I forgot shades, and I was like, I need
yeah,
something to protect my eyes so I can see something. And I went to
yeah,
spent about 6,000, 7,000 pesos on this bad boy, and
nice.
it's it's now my favorite thing. I told my NCSA friends, I'm like, I'm gonna wear this everywhere. Like
Yeah,
I'm
trademark.
I'm gonna be this guy. I'm gonna go to South County club matches, and I'm gonna be looking like Poppy here and doing work. So
It's Lombardi-esque almost. If you pair it with a suit, you could pull that off.
I want a cigar too. You imagine if I
Yes,
was if I
that'd be
if I was
great.
at a South County regional match and I'm sitting there with a cigar.
Yeah,
Oh my god,
guys,
dude,
say
kill me.
say hello to my little friend, guys. Yeah.
All right, so the things that you are uncertain of,
Yeah,
let's talk about those a little bit.
there's one thing. There's one thing, and this is something that I know I've been a part of as a player. I've been a part of it as a coach, and I've gotten it wrong near 100% of the time, and I don't know the answer. And it's, how do you choose the captains or whatever you call it, captains council,
Oh,
leadership? How do you choose captains for your team? And
oh,
obviously, I think there's always a natural inclination of teams to look to their best player for leadership, for guidance on the court. That person is not always the best leader for a team. Maybe not doesn't have the best leadership style, maybe isn't comfortable in that spot. So how do you do it correctly? Do you choose as a coach? Do you let your players choose? Are you sure you want to let your players choose? I've been a part of it as a player where the coaches have chosen. I've been a part of it as a player where the players vote. I've been a part of a skills competition. Like it's
those
been all the above.
competition.
That was senior year. We had four guys who probably should have been captain. So Harry put us through a skills competition to see who should be captain. It ended up devolving into something it probably shouldn't have been, and thankfully one of those people relented and gave up his spot, and probably smoothed the dynamic over to where it should have been. And that doesn't always
Mm,
happen. And
yeah,
not that we've been over this, but that team was so good, as I don't think different captains would have made a difference. But I knew.
right.
So let me give you the long story short. Myself, Steve Fuller were in the leadership positions of that team. The team, the previous year, it had Steve and Dave as captains. But I felt like I deserved that role as well, not as a junior, but certainly as a senior, considering the work I had put in, the role I had played the year before. And then K-Mac, Kevin, deserved that role as well, because, you know, we may have been the more outspoken, mediocre, even with all the other weapons that we had. So all of these people sort of had a claim, and we didn't know how to settle that. We can't have 4 captains. So we ended up putting together a competition where you got to pass 5 balls to target. You got to shoot 10 free throws setting. You got to do this. You got to do that. But, you know, we got into a spot where there's a cart next to the net, and we're trying to pass into it. And all of a sudden, because we're trying to win, we're just shooting balls as hard as we can into the net so that they dribble down into the cart. And it's like, well, that's not really the spirit. It's just to earn more points. And then we got into a place where it's like, well, what the hell are we doing right now? Right. And then Dave relented because he's a junior, is going to be a senior. That was probably that was a very selfless move by him. And like I said, he has 8 championships, so that's probably part of his character, to recognize it's best for team dynamics to let me, who is probably a little more immature about that particular role, have that. And that's what I needed to vouch. I've never figured that out. I don't know what the right move is. And like I said, anytime I've chosen one path, I feel like I've gotten it wrong, and I will never get it right. So I don't know what your philosophy is on that. What are the pitfalls, and you know, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, picking up captains is really a pain in the butt.
Yeah, does it matter? Let's start with this. Does it matter?
It's a pain in the ass. It does matter in some ways. Because there is,
I agree, by the way.
There is sort of a hierarchy of players and leadership on your team, whether you want to or not. Oddly enough, I found it's more important in the women's side than the men. There seems to be sort of, you know, the quote unquote alpha female that sort of needs to be in charge, and not always. I mean, one of the few things that's very true about this particular topic is that there are no absolutes. Like, you can sort of figure out, you have to figure out the relationships and the personalities and all that fun stuff, and then you got to sort of decide how you want to do it. I would never let the kids decide. It's just not how I would do it. Because then it's just a popularity contest, and it doesn't provide what you need. But at the same time, to be fair, oftentimes
they need that.
Well, the kids have, you know, they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the team. You know, and one of the things that captains, especially at the collegiate level, you rely on those people to be communication mouthpieces for you. Right? Like, you rely on those people to sort of, you know, help police the situation. Like, you know, there's things that you can do with your captains. Hey, player X is just always going to the bar every night. Can we get him to sort of calm down there a little bit? And maybe we can, you know, but I can't, as a coach, you can't be like, dude, stop going to the bar. But I can have the captain say, listen, man, our level, this is what we've decided. Don't go there anymore. And they'll respect that more than me coming in saying you can't go to a certain spot. You know, I think one of the things you do need to do as a coach is you do need to set roles. Like, that needs to happen. So, you know, before I'm even thinking who's the captain of the team, I'm thinking who's the top libero, who's going to be the captain of my backcourt, who's going to be the top middle, who's going to be the captain of setting my blocking schematics for when we play. You know, who's you know, generally the setter makes most of the decisions in leadership roles anyway. So do we have a setter that's stout, that can actually provide that gravitas? You know, outside hitters tend to be a little bit less, you know, leadership role, more laissez-faire. Same with the opposites. But like, I guess the point of the story is that you got to know your team, you got to understand what the dynamics are, and you still may get it wrong. The 2020 team at JWU, I got it completely wrong. Like, I thought I came in with a good idea, thought I understood how things were going, picked 4 guys, and all 4 just, you know, had failures some of it wasn't even their fault, but just failures in the way they communicated and dealt with the team. And it was, the more I looked at it now, they're sort of set up to fail. Like I had a big middle who, was a second team all conference player, but he wasn't really interested in being a leader, but I chose him anyway because I felt like he had earned it. I had a bench
Yeah.
player who was, always hurt, and no one really respected what he was doing. I had my backup libero who I felt could be very good, but he was he was small in stature, and people just didn't care what he
Yeah.
thought. And then I had an outside hitter who was really
Yeah.
more interested in himself than anything else. And so, like, in my head, it all made sense because it covered all the things that I felt needed to happen. But at the end of the day, it was completely wrong. So you got to, I don't think there is a good way. I do think that you can go wrong. Like, if you let the kids, if you let the inmates run the asylum, it can go south really quick. But at the end of the day, you need a captain to go do the coin toss, and you need a captain to go talk to the official. So, who do you want to address the official? That matters probably a ton. And then who
Yeah.
do you want, the coin toss, have somebody look pretty. Like, it doesn't matter. but that's sort of where I'm at on the.
Hey,
Hey, we're back
you
and we're
hear
still
me? We're
recording, which
back.
is pretty wild. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's going to unfortunately plague this conversation is that the internet here in Cancun's a little touchy. So, some of it came in, some of it not. It's not going to be the cleanest, but it's still a great conversation, Ed. I really have enjoyed it. Probably need to wrap up here, mainly because I don't know how much longer we have. And you're stuck now too. Sweet. Oh my gosh. Well, while Ed is trying to get back onto the internet, Coach Reslow here. How is everyone? So, yeah, as you might know, I'm in Cancun, Mexico, and I had an opportunity to talk with Coach DelSignore, and the internet's a little touchy. But really great conversation. It was wonderful having Ed on. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. I'll post it soon enough, and I'll be back in town soon. But I want to thank everybody. And as always, thank everybody for the interest in ResV. Certainly feel free to reach out with any questions, and hopefully I can work with some people, and help people and do all the things. Definitely want to thank Coach Eddie. It's been a strong supporter of ResV from the get-go, and he's just a wonderful guy. So really, grateful to have him in my life. And yeah, everyone, stay well, talk soon, and looking forward to the week 8 and playoff week for the girls volleyball. And then also we're getting to the end of the Ivy League for playoffs for Brown University, where I'm a color commentator. And there are a lot of good things coming up. And then club season gets going. I know South County's making their teams now. Blast is about to, and then certainly others. And once the club season gets going, we'll be reporting on that. I'll be doing the 18-1s boys for South County, and it's going to be a good one again this year. But we're going to have a lot of good teams this year in the South County world. So check in on all that stuff. So, all right, stay well, everyone. Thanks again. ResV Systems.